Let's see. Are we live? My video didn't start, but are we broadcasting? Hello? Hello and welcome to Pardon My Disruption. Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're being disrupted.
Let's see.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
There it is.
Because we're a very high budget show, we don't have a sound engineer, so we always have to check the sound to make sure, because we broadcast for the hearing impaired many times.
Yes.
Where there's been video but no sound. Welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am Alan Berkson. I am the Director of Community Outreach for Fresh Desk, and I am joined as always by the Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmis.
Greetings.
How are you today, Doctor? I shouldn't ask that question.
Another question.
But I will say that it is a beautiful day in downtown Stamford, Connecticut.
Yes, the weather, anyhow.
We are broadcasting live from the Stanford Innovation Center, at least for now.
That's a whole other discussion.
That is a whole other discussion.
If we want to get into the foresight of governmental agencies and how they are investing for the future.
Hold that thought. So we're here we're here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be on December 9th. Now, we were talking about this before the show, the second Friday of the month, because the elections are the first Tuesday after the first Monday, and the Electoral College, I believe, is the first Wednesday after the second Tuesday of the month.
So the fact that we're merely the second Friday, but maybe we need to do something.
But we unconsciously mirrored the founding fathers. So maybe we were onto something.
Who said it was unconscious? Always thinking.
Always thinking. So there's a lot of tech to talk about, but I guess we have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh.
No pun intended.
Yeah. The orange elephant.
No. Yeah. All right.
Okay. I'm going to.
Let's talk about it from perspective of you are Dr. Disruptive. That moniker was because, and if people aren't familiar, that was because you were an analyst covering disruptive technologies. We clearly are going through a disruptive time in terms of communications and stuff like that. So we want to just maybe give us a little perspective.
Yeah, and I will try and stay away from politics as much as possible. But the environment that's gone on there, first of all, there are a couple of questions. I want to first address the election itself. And the pollsters, how could they have gotten it so wrong? That's an interesting technology question. And the short answer is garbage in, garbage out. That's one of the things that we in the computer industry, we can crunch all the numbers you give us. And if you give us garbage, we're going to produce garbage. And the best example of that is Nate Silver. Everybody's guru. Nate Silver, for those of you who don't know, the prognosticator at 538.com, perhaps the best known pollster in the country, does no polling of his own. What he does is look at everybody else's polls and say, how have they compared in the past? And therefore, how do I ascribe weights to them so that I can draw some judgments? They've been historically high, they've been historically low. So let me try and average those things out. There are two problems with his approach in this election. Number one, comparing things to historical norms when things are so out of the ordinary is a bad way to do things.
Right. So the baseline was, he was assuming everything was normal.
Right. And we clearly know it wasn't.
Right.
Number two, a business client of mine, CEO of a company called C3 Metrics, it's in the attribution business, tweeted a link to me, and there was some interesting information in there. Are you aware that FedEx and UPS only cover about 70% of the United States?
I was not aware of that.
The U.S. Postal Service covers 100%. FedEx and UPS only cover 70% because it's really hard and expensive.
I was going to say that other 30% is probably the most expensive territory that the Postal Service covers.
And guess who that 30% is voting for? It's not us in New York or in the Bay Area or traditionally, blue segments. So the likelihood is those people were underrepresented in lots of surveys. And where they were represented are probably things that we tended to discount because we might have viewed them as Republican-leaning mouthpieces anyhow, so they were over-representing. And the question of sampling and sampling error, all of that stuff.
Sampling drives me nuts. I'm not a statistician. I'm not, I know math, but I see the survey says we surveyed, 475 people.
And that represents 300 million.
And that represents 300 million.
Well, I believe in the statistics, but the problem is, is...
But is the accuracy...
Garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
If you don't have a representative sample, and even with those small numbers, that's why nobody ever pays attention to the margin of error. And the margin of error, most of the surveys were probably within their margin of error. And guess what? The margin of error generally skewed toward Trump. And as a result, the statisticians will go, well, we were within the margin of error, but they got it wrong. But it really comes down to the fact that surveying works under normal circumstances if you have a representative base. We didn't have a representative base, and there are so many things that went into why they got it wrong. It's hard to find the people in the hinterlands. Are there people who might have been, because of social pressures, skewed to not say they were supporting Trump?
Well, right. So did they actually tell the truth to the polls?
Right.
Right.
And did the people show up? Because some of the polls are just random citizens. Some of them are of likely voters. Yeah. How do you determine what's a likely voter?
Right. Well, look, what was the numbers? 50% of the population voted?
Didn't vote.
So half the population did not vote.
Which blows my mind. I don't understand. And for those of you in swing states who didn't vote, shame on you.
Well, just because you didn't vote, Jim. But the other thing I think right now, all over the world, because complex systems are tough to predict, and all over the world right now, meteorologists are going, "I told you so."
Yeah, and they're about to get repudiated, but that's a whole other discussion. The other thing that I think is so interesting about this election, and it's the role of technology. And one of my things where I've come away from this election, and like everybody else, we've done a lot of navel gazing the last couple of days, saying, how did this happen? Where's this country heading? And it's clear what Donald Trump's appeal was. Right. We have a complex problem, and he offered a soundbite answer.
Simple solution.
Yep. I'm going to make America great again. The challenge we've got, for instance, he's going to bring manufacturing back. Guess what? This country makes more than it's ever made, but we don't need people to do that. Increasingly, we need, look at Germany, and why are they such a manufacturing hub? It's not because they're manufacturing cheap, easy to do things. They've got a sophisticated manufacturing process with highly skilled people manufacturing sophisticated items, cars, advanced electronics.
Right.
The cheap stuff is in China, and even they're being disrupted because there's cheaper stuff coming out of Vietnam and the Philippines. So what we really need are people who have 21st century skills. I'm not going to get into my pet peeve, but pet peeve number one. I, in high school, was fortunate enough, back in a time when nobody had computers. I had computers in high school. In 1971, 72, I graduated high school. Yeah, I am, aren't I? Older than you.
Older than I am.
Yeah, if you're lucky, you'll make it this far.
That's my line.
And keep it up like this, and maybe you won't.
Right.
But I had computers back in high school, and just a few of us did. And who knew back then that it was going to be so important? Well, I got lucky. But what did I spend more time in high school learning more than computers? I learned French. Je parle un peu le français. What does that get me? Maybe slightly better service at a French restaurant.
Or maybe worse if your accent's bad.
No, they appreciate the effort. My
Okay.
accent is bad. They appreciate the effort. I'll give them credit for that. I mean, Parisians have a reputation for being really rude. Maybe it's the New Yorker and I'm used to that attitude. And they give you credit for trying French, and they'll work along until it becomes painful. And then many of them who do speak English will happily switch over. They're probably going to make it stop. But anyhow, why are we still teaching kids French?
Why?
Why don't we have a focus on the technical skills that are necessary to compete in this 21st century, situation? And not only in the high schools, all of these people who are or underemployed, we need a massive retraining effort. So I think, what's happened here, we've got more manufacturing output than we ever had. We've got more farm output than we've ever had. And we don't need people to do it. And this is just the beginning. When you look at what's coming with robotics and AI, I'm not the most optimistic driverless car, but, proponent. But we had a delivery, what was it, the week before last? A truck went how many ever hundreds of miles delivering a truck full of Budweiser. Somewhere there's a joke in there to be made, but we've had a proof of concept that an unmanned delivery truck can do intercity driving. Right. We're about to put several 100,000 more people into the unemployment rolls. And when you look at the hopelessness of these people that led them to say, I need to blow up the system because the system's not working for me.
Right.
Where the system has failed them, in my mind, is they don't have these 21st century skills, and I see no discussion about that taking place. In the post-mortem, in the debates leading up to this, and it's one of those things. I'm what I call, perhaps a social media activist. I post way too much on social media and haven't done nearly enough to actually do things. That's why I went down to Philadelphia Monday and Tuesday for this week to actually work for one of the campaigns.
Just by saying where you went, it says.
Well, it was a swing state for either candidate.
Yeah,
it was a swing state.
Yeah.
So I'm not giving anything away, but but anyhow, I think this election has exposed an education problem that technology has disrupted a lot of things, and we're not minting the people who can compete in that kind of environment.
Well, technology has also disrupted how we get information and what information we get.
Yes.
When I did my TED Talk, and you talk about the essential skills for the 21st century, my TED Talk, or TEDx, was 3 essential skills. The first one, and I did this, I wrote the original post over 2 years ago. The first skill is learning how to vet, learning how to tell whether something is true. And during this whole election process, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, whatever you want, so many people who I know who are very smart, so it's not about intelligence. Somebody put stuff up on social media that was patently, from humor sites that they thought were real articles. And people make that mistake, and it's hard. And Facebook reinforces this, and that whole social bubble reinforces this. So that whole way we get information, and that information is the input. We talk about garbage in, garbage out. That's how we think about the world, and that's how we try to make our decisions, and that's been disrupted.
Yeah, and President Obama talked about that, I believe, yesterday, talking about the exhaust or something like that. Because again, I guess maybe I'm cranky today. This is going to be a day of pet peeves. A big pet peeve to me, when you click on a Facebook link, an article, when you come back to the Facebook page, it now pops up other stories related to what you said, what you looked at.
I have to say, I've never clicked on an other story. I barely even look at that.
Oh, I
But
do
I guess that's your academic. You want to say, what is Facebook trying to do?
Yeah, or I'll look at something and they're reasonably accurate because I clicked on this. I might be interested in this, The problem is the stuff they present as things I might be interested in a lot of instances, I don't want to quantify it. It's not 80%. I mean, we analysts, everything's either 80-20 or 50-50. So 80% of the links are legitimate, but 20% of the things are patently false and untrue. They're satire sites. They're discredited positions.
Right.
They're articles that are months or years old.
But Facebook has AI that is basically trying to say, here's what people are posting, and so here's what could be related, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the veracity or the
ignorance gets amplified. It's like we've got something ignorant. Lots of people are looking at it. Let's spread it even more because lots of people are looking at it. And to the skill set you talk about, you're right. It's not both sides. In fact, my daughter yesterday messaged me, and I talk about my kids a lot. Proud of them. My daughter's 22 in her third year of med school. By all accounts, a really smart, good kid. And
smarter than her father.
Yes, and better looking. But she said to me,
I didn't say that.
I did. You're being polite.
I don't know why.
But anyhow, she said to me, Dad, I realized I've perpetuated a bubble. I look at the New York Times, I look at CNN, and there's a whole world of opinion about which I know nothing. And how do I look at those things? And there's a side of me that says, on the one hand, I'm glad she doesn't, because telling her to look at Breitbart and look at InfoWars, it's like, there is a dark and ugly world. And those of you who, go to sites on the opposite side of the political spectrum, whichever happen to be, and then read the comments on those websites. Oh my God, I don't care which side of the spectrum you're on. It's a depressing thing, devoid of constructive dialogue, devoid of information.
So I'm going to ask you to put on your disruptive predictor future analyst hat now. Mm-hmm. So now that we've depressed everybody,
give them hope.
What is I'm not going to say what is the answer. What is an answer? What is a direction? Where do you see a trend or that?
Well, okay, I will be optimistic. 50 point whatever, more people voted for one candidate than the other. So this is a nation that it's I'll come back. I know where you're going.
All right. Yeah, I'm just trying to get it off the politics and into the technology.
Yeah, but I think what we realize is, somewhere out of this thing, we've got to figure out common grounds. The notion, united we stand, divided we fall. Don't get me going on the divided, because I have for probably 10 years now been of the belief that there is a very real and increasingly likely scenario that our schisms are so deep that we become red and blue countries. That it's happened in a lot of places in the world. We ourselves tried to do it 150 years ago. It's not out of the question that the divide is so intractable. But until and unless we get to that point, I think both sides recognize that to make progress, it comes down to, we can disagree on opinions, but we can't disagree on the facts. And
we're in a post-truth society, so that's part of the challenge. So that's what I want you to address. Yeah. How do we get past that?
And I think a lot of our, it's going to be if you're a technology company today, it's a really interesting time to be an American technology company. We've got a president who has made.
Usually, when people say interesting, that's not good. So
you're right.
Continue.
It's well, when you say it's not good, those things. We'll see whether it becomes a really good scenario or a really bad scenario. But we've got a situation. Apple is going to be under increasing pressure to make things at home. And there may well be punitive tariffs if they continue to make things in China and bring them here.
Right.
those of you who like iPhones, I do get my iPhone now, because 6 months from now, it may be $300 more expensive to get it. But I think the companies who spread information, and let me divide that into media companies and technology platforms, and each of them have some interesting responsibilities. Can the media platforms that have capitalized on divisiveness, think about it a couple of years ago. Let's go back to the time when there was just CNN. And along came Roger Ailes, and he said, wow, there's an audience here that's being underserved, and I can capitalize on it. And I'm going to go to the right of CNN and carve off that piece. And then along came MSNBC and said, CNN's trying to hew to the middle, the right's gone, let me carve it away from the left. And they grabbed the left away, and CNN was left like, our audience has disappeared, what do we do? And they went eeny, meeny, miny, moe, and cast their lot. And so what we've largely had is an abandonment of people who are really trying to share facts and have all sorts of special interests. Pet peeve number 17 today is people lamenting what's going on in mainstream media. How do they know what's going on in mainstream media? None of them are watching it anymore. They're getting all of their information from these politicized sources. We don't have the Walter Cronkites and Huntley and Brinkley and all of that kind of stuff. Kids Google it. And I think there is an opportunity. We all realize that somewhere there's a middle ground that we're not seeing. I know, my daughter has seen it. I've worked hard at it, but I think people on both sides recognize, wow, we're seeing two different worlds. What's really going on? And I like to believe there's an opportunity for someone to hew out the middle ground. And then to come to the technology side,
right?
At some point, we've all said, wouldn't it be great if my browser had an automated Snopes check?
Right.
So that anytime you're about to, promulgate a lie, Snopes comes up and says, and how we do that and how that gets spread, I actually believe is going to be increasingly important, because we've got a sea of opinions, but a paucity of data, and that if we can't agree on the facts, we've got a really big intractable problem that's going to cause us global competitive problems. It's going to screw up the climate and employment and the financial system and so on. So being optimistic, I think there is an opportunity for responsible parties to say, here's how we're going to vet things. And I know people are thinking, well, who gets to say who the facts are?
Right.
Yeah. If I had a solution to that challenge,
that's what you'd be doing right now.
Yeah. I'm optimistic that one exists.
Look on a simpler scale. So, there's this whole challenge with phishing attacks and people clicking on bad links, and there are projects like OpenDNS, which says, go here first, check that link, and don't let them click on it if it's been established that it's a bad link.
Right.
That's on a small scale, taking something that is has malicious intent and finding a way to address that. But that's an easier fact.
Yeah. But some of the things are, I still think possible, even if it's merely, here are two opinions on either side of this question, and go read the two opinions and figure out which one you believe. Because so many people now, I think, are only reading one.
What about, can AI attack that problem?
Well, no. Not in the short term.
That was a loaded question.
Yes, I know. Because, AI, at the end of the day, somebody's written a computer program, so it's a human making a judgment about how you should interpret something, and I'm a big believer in intelligent systems. And, if we want to get really futuristic, we can go on to the notion of the singularity and when the computers have more thinking power than people. And we've already got learning systems.
Maybe already for some of the people I know.
I know you're not talking about me. Yeah. No, but
My physics teacher in high school used to, whenever he was mad at us, would say, you could be replaced by an inexpensive pocket calculator.
yes.
So
And
I have that in my head.
And there are a lot of people in the world right now who ought to be asking themselves that question. Am I doing something that could be replaced?
Jeremiah on Facebook, he said, tell me a job that will not be replaced by automation.
Yeah. And in what time frame?
And in what time frame?
Yeah. And that's why you said, will AI do it? I think I'm optimistic. On the other hand, we get into fascinating questions. Those of us who have ever programmed computers don't believe in the infallibility of computer systems.
It's only as smart as how you program it.
Yeah. That's why, I'm one of those people. Part of the reason why I'm not so optimistic about self-driving cars is, somewhere it's going to go wrong, and the computer is going to go, the Y2100 problem, and all of a sudden the car is going to go, haywire, or need a reboot or something like that.
Y2100.
Y2K.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened.
It took me a second to figure that out. Okay.
Or maybe it's 2048 is the next problem.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. We should all be scared of 2048.
Yeah.
Think about it. I'll give you a second.
Yeah, 2 to the something.
All right. Let's move on to some technology, because there's been some product announcements, some of which we like, some of which we don't like so much. We can start with our favorite topic, which is, of course, Apple. We're working here on this is a MacBook Air that we're working from. I've got my iPhone here.
Yeah, so they had product introductions. New MacBook Air. Oops, nope, nothing there. Yeah, MacBook Pro radical overhaul.
And then the hype over this.
The touch bar.
The touch bar. That's like 2005. What is that?
Not even. Yeah.
The touch bar. Why doesn't Apple have a touchscreen, Jonathan?
Because Steve Jobs didn't believe in it. Because it will mess up the resolution of their Retina device. I don't know. There's, and this is a company that did a really good job of having touch interface on the phone.
That's I guess that's all kidding aside, that's what I don't understand. They've been able to revolutionize touch.
Yes, and
as an interface, and yet it hasn't found its way into their flagship, computers.
It's been a recurring theme of this show that has Apple lost its way? They're not leading in touch. They're not leading in voice. They're not leading in AI. They're not leading in augmented/virtual reality. All of the new disruptive technologies, and it used to be, some of it, let's think back a little. The world in which Apple prospered was a world where product cycles and innovation was measured in years. So Microsoft, Xerox would do something, come out with a GUI. Microsoft would come out with one 7 years later, and Apple would come out with one 2 years later that was even better. That pace of innovation is gone. You see new platforms, and they only got 100 million new users this week. They suck. And
but the operating system has actually been simplified and reduced, meaning most people don't run Apple OS or Windows. They run browser. That's their operating system, and that's a much lower common denominator in terms of platforms to develop.
Yes. And, so the ability to differentiate is, both harder and easier, but, the failings, look at all the things they haven't done. And they introduce a new computer with a touch bar. I mean, I remember going to CES.
It's basically a watch, an Apple Watch on your Mac.
Yeah, and not even that. I remember going to CES 4 or 5 years ago, meeting with somebody from Motorola who was having, a context-sensitive UI on their phone. And the idea was, when it's a music player, you want it to look like a music player. When it's a computer, you want it to, and you had a context-sensitive experience. Apple now has a context-sensitive experience on a row on the keyboard. I mean, what are they doing? They've backed off on their car ambitions,
right?
Because they recognize A, it's really hard. B, manufacturing the whole car, unless they buy Tesla, what are they going to do? That the lead time to get up to speed on that, so they'll try and make it a software platform. But Apple's also had some recurring challenges, and the challenges come about because the music industry didn't see them coming. And Apple took over the music industry with the iPod and iTunes.
Right.
The entertainment industry, movies and TV, saw them coming. And as a result, there's been, on the one hand, Luddite to a large extent, trying to retard things as long as possible. But at the same time, understanding what the Apple playbook is and successfully fighting Apple off.
Give me an example.
Netflix,
Hulu,
yeah.
all these.
They're not on Apple TV.
Right.
And why are they not on Apple TV? In large measure, one, Apple doesn't have the penetration. Two, they look at it and say, going direct to customers the way we're doing it, we don't have to give Apple anything, and we just have to give small pieces to people. Apple's going to come in and suck an increasing share of our revenue. They're going to disintermediate us and control the customer relationship. This is bad for us. We're not going to let it happen.
So I want to talk about ecosystems, because it's something I think about. I have an iPhone. My kids have an iPhone. I'm invested in the Apple ecosystem just because of the ability to share. There's some functionality where it's Apple only, iMessage, find friends, that kind of stuff. On the Android side, it's different. Google came out with a Pixel phone, and so you can say.
I don't think it's different.
You don't think so?
No, because Android is the ecosystem.
But you have much more. The only place I can buy a Apple phone is from Apple, and,
Yes.
and I'm limited to the functionality. But
Yes.
if I wanted to get the best camera on a phone on a market, I cannot buy it and say I want a iOS phone.
And Apple has been playing a different game than everybody else. There's this ecosystem, high-end, lock-in, control. We know better. And there are things that are causing them challenges on all of those fronts. High-end, they're not the only, they're not so much better, that you can make an argument, okay, I'll get the best from other people. Lock-in, at some level you have less choice in an Apple world, and
That's always been the case.
Yeah.
Because we just say, well, you only need one phone to select, one tablet to select, one computer to select, and we've made that choice.
Yeah. But that was great when they were delivering the best experience. Now, when they're delivering an incomplete experience, Amazon Echo, Google Home, these speakers that sit around and become virtual assistants in your home are very much part of the ecosystem. And you don't have an Echo, do you?
I don't.
I've got one at home.
I asked this question not sarcastically. Has it changed your life?
changed my life.
No, I mean, sometimes,
It's changed my behavior.
sometimes technology, you didn't realize how it would impact your life until you have it, and then you start using it, like, oh my God, how did I live without it?
It's changed my behavior. To a point, I say, my neighbors, I have a contentious relationship with neighbors across the hall who have a barking dog at all hours of the day and night. So, but, while I complain about their dog, they're probably wondering who this Alexa woman I'm getting is. Because there are a whole bunch of things, Alexa, add this to my shopping list. Alexa, do this. Alexa, do that. And there are things that before, I might have gone to pick up my phone, but it was too much work, too much effort. And so are these life-changing? No. Are they behavioral changing? Yes. And the future interface, the human-machine interface is going to be not just a touch screen. It's going to be gestures. It's going to be visual. It's going to be audible. And I was one for a long period of time. I remember Ray Kurzweil speaking at a Gartner conference in about 1990 or so, talking about how speaker-independent real-time voice recognition was just around the corner. And as is so often the case, just around the corner was a little longer than we thought. But we are really pretty darn close to there.
Right.
Good enough to rely on those kinds of technologies so that I can sit there and say, Alexa, do something. And I'm not in one of these frustrating, do I need to enunciate more? No, the system is pretty darn good. And one of the geniuses of the Amazon system is the way they've done it with all of these microphones, that even in a noisy environment, I don't have to mute the TV. I don't have to stop the music. It's able to discern spoken communication in a real world environment, not just an optimized, I'm wearing a headset with no background sound.
So
that's game changing. So
you've talked about that Apple, and on this show, we talked about the fact that the next Apple's frontier was in the home. And Apple's part of their culture, part of their corporate narrative, it has always been giving people things that they didn't know they needed.
Yes, and taking things that were interesting but unnecessarily complex.
So is there room here for Apple to jump in here still?
I mean, yes, from the perspective that the market is still nascent. Penetration is very low. The challenge is I see no signs that Apple is close to doing it much better than everybody else. For instance, Siri. If you compare Siri to Google Assistant to Amazon,
Alexa,
Echo,
right, Echo,
whatever we want to refer to it as.
Don't name your kid Alexa.
In most comparisons, competitive, but depending upon how you factor things, they may be first, second, or third. And let's not underestimate the ability of anybody to do technological leapfrogs. And God knows they're all buying up companies that are going to improve these things. And could they surprise us? Could they make a smart acquisition and or internal development with all the resources they've got, and leapfrog ahead? Yeah, but what gives you confidence in their ability to do that? I'm always looking for evidence. The product innovation for, post Steve Jobs has been pretty shoddy.
All right, let's move on. I was watching a commercial. Actually, I haven't watched the show, but it was a commercial for the new Kevin James show. And his son comes up to him and says, "Dad, I think I got a concussion." And he says, "You were playing video football. How did you get a concussion? You were playing Madden. How did you get a concussion?" And I know you put down esports here. So
this is something, one of the recurring themes of this show is there are technological phenomena for which you and I are blissfully unaware.
Blissfully unaware.
Yeah.
This one?
But our kids, are all over it. The Snapchats and, stuff like that are things that, started with a younger demographic and only slowly have made have repolluted their platform.
Well, once the businesses figured out there was an opportunity to reach an audience, that's when it gets all messed up.
So esports, people watching video games.
I had friends of mine who went to a tournament.
Yes.
It may have been like the Garden or something.
Yeah, the Garden last month had 15,000 people in the audience watching this League of Legends. It's a video game. There was a tournament. There were 15,000 people in Madison Square Garden watching them compete at the Garden on the screens and so on.
I would venture to say that there were 15,000 people watching two screens because they were watching that and they were on their phone.
Yes.
No question.
In Poland last year, 100,000 people were in an arena watching esports. ESPN, if you go to espn.com/esports, ESPN is covering it. It's not quite an esport, but I was just reading something yesterday, drone racing. If you're a good drone racing pilot, there's a drone racing league and they're paying, the drone racing pilots $75,000. And think about it.
So you're talking about new careers. We were talking about at the beginning of the show. How do you retrain yourself?
You laugh. But the ability to navigate virtual worlds or the intersection of virtual and physical worlds, drones, those kinds of things. It's a somewhat minimal career because technology, automated pilots may take that over at some point, but there will be human judgment involved for a while. But this esports phenomenon, you think about what's going on, and increasingly these days, live sports was the salvation, or so they thought, of the media industry, because it's the one thing everybody does physically together at the same time.
And temporally relevant, meaning you don't want to watch it, the next day or a week later or a month later.
Right.
It's bad. It's in and out. Yeah.
But who wants their kid to be a football player these days? At some point, first of all, only a very small percentage of people have the physical skills to do it. And those people, we now know are subjecting themselves to concussions that will lead them, to have all sorts of problems and
it's going to have lasting physical impact.
Yeah. Where, you
get a little arthritis in your thumb. When you're 70 or something.
I don't want to underestimate that, because I'm having, finger issues with a finger that I believe is attributable to having held a tablet for a lot of years. I talked to a doctor the other day, and it's like, you've got a problem with the tendon going through the sheath, that it's not,
you used to have tennis elbow, now you have tablet finger.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. You've heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen, tablet finger. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but this whole esports phenomenon, at some point, we've talked about this before, augmented reality, the notion is, what if the blurring of lines made reality a read-write medium?
Right. We've talked about that.
What's the difference between watching an esports football game and a real football game? If you're watching on TV, there's at some level no difference.
Well, look,
at some level, no difference.
So I'm not a huge fan of The Matrix, the movies, but there was a scene where Neo first is learning how to fight, and they put him in this room, and I can't remember what the other character who was the
Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, it was Lawrence Fishburne.
What was his character's name?
Yeah. Anyway, he says to him, "Do you think anything I do here has anything to do with my physical capabilities?" It's mental gymnastics, it's mental agility, it's mental
and
capacity.
It's us jacking into the Matrix.
Yeah.
But I think that blurring of lines between the physical and the virtual.
Is that why you shaved your head? head, so you're ready?
Yeah, no, I'd rather have hair because, if I'm one of the early adopters, people might be scared seeing that, the adapter. Believe me, if I could have hair, I'd have hair.
I see some commercials. No, never mind. Okay.
No, I mean, yes, there are surveys that indicate, women think this is more virile and, and thank God for that. I wish I could have hair.
All right, moving on. All right, let's get to some quick bites. Singles Day.
11/11.
And this is not a dating day.
Well, sort of. It started, this is a contrived holiday made up by Alibaba in China to get, and the reason why it's 11/11, you're alone. We're going to have a collective shopping day for ourselves. And I think the first year it did about $50 million. It was shopping day yesterday, and the first 5 minutes, they did $1 billion in sales.
$1 billion
in 5 minutes.
Right.
Now, they didn't maintain that pace, and by midday, they had only done $15 billion.
Only, right?
Yeah, which was what they had done in the entirety of last year. It's an amazing shopping phenomenon. There are those who are looking at it and saying it's also a sign of the slowing Chinese economy, because they only doubled this year its slowing growth. We should all have such problems. But it's an amazing phenomenon that a vendor-invented holiday, can do $30 billion of sales in a single day.
All right,
remarkable.
Let's talk about a topic, because this is actually impacted for me and Freshdesk, because we are part of this collaboration experimentation. So we've got Microsoft. You wrote down here Microsoft versus Slack. So why don't you see if you can?
Yeah, well, Slack, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is the darling of Silicon Valley, a collaborative platform that and I'd add into the discussion Facebook for business. We've been trying since.
I don't know about Facebook for business. Maybe like WhatsApp on steroids, or
but it's a combination of things.
Right.
that if we sit there and say, let me advance a premise that that email was a great productivity tool that outlived its usefulness. And we applied it to so many things to which it's ill-equipped that it's no longer just a solution to a problem, but a problem in and of itself, that we don't have good mechanisms for sharing information in structured and ad hoc fashions.
I would even say that the email has taken the form of a conversational platform, but it's not. And when as a conversational medium, it fails miserably.
Oh, there's so many things.
But that's the key point, though, because there are better ways to have a conversation, and that's where something like Slack comes in, where you don't have to CC the world, you don't have to reply. All people who want to see it can see it because they sign up for it.
And people who weren't involved in it can come easily up to speed,
right,
because there's history and there's
right,
context and structure.
Right.
And if I'm doing a bad job of explaining the platform, this is the reason why none of these platforms have 100% market penetration right now.
Perfect.
Because there's so many things. You yourself referred to it earlier. I didn't know I needed it until I had it, and once I had it, it changed my life.
Right.
These platforms are like that. They're the kinds of things, once you have them, it's like, wow, how did I work without them? But until you actually try them and use them, they don't work. So Slack was a Silicon Valley startup that timed it well. They had the right feature set at the right time in the market and have moved forward aggressively. Microsoft was on the cusp of buying them for about $8 billion when Bill Gates said, for $8 billion, you know, we can do this ourselves.
Right?
Yeah. And you know, so Microsoft has come out with its Teams product
which I haven't seen. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay.
You know, well, seen it. I've not worked on it.
Worked on it, right?
Yeah. And the idea is, you know, how do I take, you know, Skype, which Microsoft acquired, you know, and do some more things to expand it from just a chat platform or a conversation platform to archival and sharing and structure, right, and so on. You know, and you know, we'll see, you know, when it comes to, you know, Microsoft, I think the decision whether to buy Slack or not, you know, is always an interesting one, because the history of buying things and killing them is large, almost as large as the history of not buying things and failing to compete.
So there's another one that we haven't talked about, and probably the fact that we haven't talked about is most likely its biggest problem, which is Google Plus has communities.
Yes.
If you don't know what Google Plus is, you're not alone. If you don't know that Google Plus has communities, you're not alone. We have been using that at Freshdesk. We've been using the Google Plus community for quite some time. People would post stuff, there'd be conversations. About 3 weeks ago, we got signed up for Facebook at work. They call it Workplace. We had more engagement in about 3 weeks than we had in a year on Google Plus. And the simple answer to that is it's because we know it. Everybody knows it. It's a platform we know. We know how to do it. We know how to post stuff. We know how to engage people. We know how to share. We know how to tag. We know how to do all the stuff that you need to do to have a conversation on a platform. So I'm curious to see what Microsoft's going to do, because the biggest challenge I've seen with collaboration platforms is that someone has to go somewhere else to do something they're not used to doing and they don't know how to do.
Yes. No, and it's another.
You have to create another habit.
Yes.
And there's a learning curve in terms of understanding the rules of the system. Facebook has a tremendous advantage there with Workplace. Don't get me wrong, there are challenges with Workplace, just like there are challenges with Facebook. But to me, that was a very stark, that jumped out at me like right away. Oh my goodness, we've got, and not only the amount of engagement, but the number of people who were engaged. We had like 7, 8 people actually participating on a regular basis on Google Plus. We've got hundreds of people on a regular basis.
Yeah, there's so many fascinating things here because it's such a wide open space. Every one of the players has a reason to succeed. Facebook, because of our familiarity from doing it in a personal environment, is a natural extension into the work environment. Microsoft, because of its ability to inculcate it into Office and Skype.
But that's where I see the most interesting part of this, is that Microsoft has an ecosystem in the enterprise. And they have people who are used to using the Microsoft, because that's that system. So if it's just part of what I'm used to using, that makes a big difference in adoption.
But I was going to say, that's the third component when you said ecosystem. They've got an ecosystem in the enterprise, but it's not yet built up around Teams, where that's been one of the great things about Slack. If you look at the Slack partnerships and its ability to integrate things like Box and Dropbox, and its agnosticism.
Freshdesk.
Yeah.
No, you can look at your Freshdesk tickets. You can create a Slack channel where you see your customer service tickets.
Yeah, you're getting your commercials worth today.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, but the ecosystems, that if Microsoft, always the challenge with Microsoft, it relates to the LinkedIn acquisition. How much are they going to be Microsoft centric, which is what's gotten them into trouble in the past, versus Satya Nadella's much more open, collaborative Microsoft. But if you're more open and collaborative, it diminishes the value of the integrated platform. So Microsoft's got some interesting challenges in this one, but all of them. Facebook has an opportunity, Microsoft has an opportunity, Slack has an opportunity, Google, I'd say there's certainly an opportunity there. Record with Google Plus is, I was going to say, checkered at best.
Well, we should talk about, maybe add 2 things to the next show. One is because, Google Classroom. And one of the things that Microsoft and Apple have done to win the hearts and minds is by being early.
Yes.
early and often.
Yes.
And I'm curious to see what the long-term impact is of something like Google Classroom, where people are graduating with that expertise
and
that.
Chromebooks, which you've often talked about.
Right.
That's a Berkson family.
All right, so we'll add that to our next show. We've got a couple minutes left. I want to see if we can do let's see if we get some of our standards. How about your pet peeve, because it happened this week?
Yeah, my pet peeve. I went down to Philadelphia to work for a candidate who shall remain nameless, but she lost.
I was going to say, and unemployed.
No, she'll be back to giving speeches for obscene amounts of money.
Right.
But anyhow, so I checked into this, very nice DoubleTree Suites hotel in suburban Philadelphia, and went to log on to the internet.
Are they the ones who give you the cookie?
Yes.
Okay, that's how I remember.
Although, I didn't get my cookie, and the reason why I didn't get my cookie is I had the digital room key. So I checked into the hotel Sunday night. Monday, when I got to the hotel, I opened up my virtual key. It told me what my room was.
Wow.
I walked up to my door, pressed the virtual key, and via Bluetooth, it unlocked the door. So I bypassed the front desk and the cookie.
All right.
They're going to have to figure out how, when I check in that way, they deliver the cookie. But once I then entered the room,
it was on your browser on your phone.
Ended. Yeah. My technological advance ended, and I will give them credit, and I've communicated with the hotel manager about this. I went and looked at the website, and the website advertised complimentary wireless internet access. It did not advertise complimentary high-speed wireless access. And I'm old enough to remember the days of 110, 300 baud modems, and I was brought back to those days. That the internet was unusable to a point where I used the wireless hotspot on my phone. That's pretty decent connectivity speed, and a lot better than what I was getting out of the hotel. Right. The general manager emailed me saying, I'm sorry, we're working with our internet provider to fix this problem. It's like, if I were working with my provider to fix a problem that I've probably had for 7 years, I might have gotten a different provider.
Wow.
I did get 5,000.
And maybe they don't care.
I did get 5,000 Hilton bonus points out of it.
There you go.
Well, if they didn't care before, they may care now, because the most current TripAdvisor review for that hotel says, lovely hotel, but if you're hoping for reasonable internet access speeds, go somewhere else. Yeah.
All right.
There are advantages to having a 73 cloud score.
You have a 73 cloud score?
Yeah, part of it. I've been tweeting and Facebooking so much politics. I was up, 69, 70, I've spiked.
You know what, I had one of my most popular tweets ever. I tweeted out, America just gave Alec Baldwin a 4-year contract on SNL. That thing got it went nuts. It was hilarious. All right, let's see if we can get a interesting factoid and get to our quote of the month.
Okay, so from the optimistic side, 98 days till pitchers and catchers.
There it is. Yeah. That's it. That's important.
The other interesting one, the magic number is 14.
14.
14.
Not 42.
No, 14.
Okay.
We had this attack the other week on Dime.
Oh, yeah. This is cool. This is
Dime, these internet DNS guys. And if you don't know it, Google what happened. It's Dime, D-Y-N. And out of it, this DNS is kind of like the roadmap of the internet. When you type in yahoo.com or Google, whatever it is.
It's the switchboard.
Yes.
It's literally the switchboard, like an old fashioned, you picture those women in the 30s and 40s with the switchboard.
And all of this stuff is widely distributed, but there's a really key place where all of that stuff comes together. And there are 14 people who have physical keys to be able to change things. To go into a room, you need 3 of them to be able to do it. And there are 14 of them, and they meet every once in a while in these super secret meetings and take out their keys. and do things. And it's one of these, you sit there, and on the one hand, it's kind of reassuring that there's some responsible party, controlling this stuff, and on the other hand, it's like
Single point of failure.
and it requires three of them, and the havoc those three people could wreak is unbelievable. But with the whole, it's going to be interesting to see, as an aside, what happens. We've handed over control of the internet domain system, US controlled entity. We have handed it over. It's no longer US controlled, and our incoming president has said, we can't do that. So there's going to be a fight for the control of the internet with all sorts of really interesting implications for its long-term directions, how universal a platform it remains, and so on, and more than we want to get into.
All right, considering that today is Veterans Day, I think we have an appropriate quote of the month. You want to do that first one?
The first one, well, I want I'll do the fourth one also, because
Okay.
it's
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I think they're both appropriate.
yeah, the fourth one, Maya Angelou said, how important it is for us to recognize and celebrate our heroes and sheroes. And that's particularly poignant this week. And then George S. Patton, it's foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived.
And on that note, thank you for joining us for Pardon My Disruption. I'm Alan Berkson, joined as always by Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmis. We're here the second Friday of every month. We'll be back on December 9th with more tech and more snark.
And less politics.
And less politics. So thank you for joining us. Have a good one.